You may know Hedy Lamarr as a Hollywood icon and as a pioneer whose frequency-hopping patent helped lay groundwork for spread-spectrum wireless communication. But do you know the terrifying secret she carried? The gilded cage she broke free from? Before she ever graced the silver screen, Hedy was trapped in a real-life horror film. She married Austrian munitions manufacturer Fritz Mandl and later claimed she was exposed to powerful fascist figures at his lavish gatherings, though the details remain difficult to verify. This isn't just a story of Hollywood glamour. It's Hedy Lamarr, the trophy wife of war who saved the world, a deep dive into the chilling privilege of the war elite and the brilliant mind that escaped their grasp. We dig into the story behind the glamour, a brilliant woman trapped in a controlling marriage, expected to smile while her husband profited from weapons and war contracts. Her audacious escape wasn't just about freedom. It was a race against time, a desperate bid for a soul. Before the world knew Hedy Lamarr, it knew Hedy Kiesler. She was born Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler in Vienna in 1914, the only child of a wealthy Jewish family. Her father was a bank director, her mother a concert pianist. She grew up in an environment of privilege and intellectual curiosity. Her father would take her on long walks, explaining how different machines worked, nurturing a mechanical fascination that would later shock the world. But it was her ethereal beauty that first opened doors and then slammed them shut. By the age of 16, she was turning heads on stage in Berlin, and by 18, she had already caused a scandal that would follow her for life with the controversial film Ecstasy. The film, featuring a brief nude scene and unprecedented expressions of female desire, was banned in many countries and condemned by the Pope himself. It made her infamous, drawing the attention of a man who saw her not as an actress, but as a prize. That man was Fritz Mandl. He was 33, she was 19. He was one of Austria's richest and most influential munitions magnates, with deep ties to Europe's weapons industry. He was charming, intelligent, and ruthlessly possessive. To Hedy, Mandl initially seemed like a way to outrun the scandal and reclaim control of her image. To Mandl, Hedy was the ultimate acquisition, the most beautiful woman in the world, a perfect ornament for his burgeoning empire built on the bedrock of conflict. Their marriage in 1933 was less a union of hearts and more a transfer of ownership. She became Frau Mandl, the trophy wife of Europe's merchant of death. They lived on a guarded country estate that functioned less like a home and more like a private fortress. It was a gilded cage indeed. Mandl filled it with priceless art, servants, and a constant stream of the most powerful and dangerous men in Europe. Lamarr later claimed that major fascist figures, including Hitler and Mussolini, appeared at Mandl's gatherings. These were not casual dinner parties. They were strategic gatherings where Mandl would broker deals, selling his arsenal to the rising Nazi regime. Hedy was always present, always impeccably dressed, adorned with Mandl's diamonds. Her role was clear. She was a silent, beautiful backdrop, a symbol of Mandl's power and good taste. She was forbidden to speak unless spoken to, forbidden to express an opinion, forbidden to make a single move that wasn't approved by her husband. He saw her as a beautiful distraction, a living mannequin to enhance his sales pitch to dictators. Mandl was pathologically jealous and controlling. He reportedly tried to suppress ecstasy by buying up prints and controlling what he could, determined to erase her past. He forbade her from acting, dismissing it as a vulgar pursuit. He dictated her wardrobe, her friends, her every movement. Lamarr later described him shutting her down in front of his guests, treating her as decoration rather than someone allowed to speak. He saw her immense intellect, her curiosity about how things worked, as an irritating distraction from her primary function, to be beautiful and silent. The castle was not just her home, it was her prison. In later accounts, Lamarr alleged that his control could be extreme, including keeping her isolated for long stretches whenever he was away. But behind the vacant stare of the trophy wife, a brilliant mind was at work. While Mandl discussed the intricacies of weapon systems with his generals and scientists, Hedy was forced to listen. She absorbed every detail, every technical specification. She learned about guided torpedoes, about frequency hopping, about the challenges of radio communication in wartime. She didn't just sit there. She analyzed, she questioned, she imagined solutions. The very mechanism of her imprisonment became her education. She was an uninvited guest at the birth of modern warfare technology, and she was taking notes. She was forced to become an expert on the very tools her husband was selling to bring destruction to the world, never knowing that this involuntary knowledge would one day be used to fight back. The weight of this life was crushing. Hedy, an intelligent, vibrant young woman, was slowly suffocating. The constant presence of men like Hitler, whose chilling charisma she witnessed firsthand, filled her with a profound dread. She was Jewish-born, yet she later said she was expected to sit politely among powerful Nazi and fascist figures. The diamonds around her neck felt like shackles, and the silken gowns felt like shrouds. She began to plan her escape. It was not a sudden impulse. It was a meticulous, dangerous undertaking worthy of a spy novel. She understood that Mandl's obsession was also his weakness. He assumed she was entirely dependent on him, entirely broken. He underestimated her. An underestimation for a genius like Hedy Lamarr was the deadliest mistake anyone could make. Her escape plan was audacious. She began to discreetly acquire an arsenal of tools, sedatives, disguises, and most importantly, her jewels. Mandl had showered her with extravagant gifts, mountains of diamonds, emeralds, and rubies. He saw them as extensions of his wealth, glittering symbols of his ownership. Hedy saw them as her future. She sewed them into the lining of a fur coat, creating a wearable fortune that would fund her freedom. The day came when she convinced Mandl to let her attend an opera in Vienna, promising to return immediately after. Mandl, perhaps feeling complacent, agreed. But Hedy had other plans. She slipped away during an intermission, returning to the castle only to carry out the most crucial part of her plan. According to later accounts, she escaped using a disguise and slipped past the household security before anyone realized she was gone. She left behind the diamonds Mandl could easily replace, taking only the ones she could physically carry, a testament to her ingenuity and determination. She fled to Paris, then to London. Mandl, furious and humiliated, used his vast network to track her, but she was always one step ahead. In London, through a stroke of luck, she met Louis B. Mayer, the head of MGM Studios, who was scouting for new talent. Mayer was instantly captivated by her beauty. He offered her a contract, but Hedy, now emboldened by her freedom, played hard to get. She knew her worth, both as a beauty and as a mind that had witnessed the dark heart of European power. She refused his initial lowball offer, booked passage on the same ocean liner as Mayer, and by the time they reached New York, she had secured a far better deal and a new name, Hedy Lamarr. She stepped onto American soil not as Mandl's trophy, but as a star in the making, carrying not just a fortune in jewels, but a mind brimming with secrets from the castle of the Merchant of Death. The first act of Hedy Lamarr's life was a testament to the chilling power of the war elite, a world where beauty was currency and genius was ignored. Her escape from Mandl's castle wasn't just a physical act. It was a psychological liberation, a rejection of the idea that she was merely a decorative object. She arrived in Hollywood carrying the physical remnants of her past, the diamonds, but more importantly, the invaluable, horrifying knowledge gained in the crucible of Mandl's war meetings. She had survived her imprisonment, but the memories of Hitler and Mussolini, of weapon schematics, and of her husband's monstrous ambition would continue to fuel a secret passion that no one in Hollywood could ever comprehend. She had escaped the devil, but the war she had witnessed was about to follow her across the ocean. Hollywood embraced Hedy Lamarr as an exotic goddess, the most beautiful woman in the world. MGM carefully crafted her image, positioning her as the epitome of glamour and mystery. Her breakthrough Hollywood film Algiers was a major hit, cementing her status as a bona fide star. She captivated audiences with her enigmatic allure, her piercing blue eyes, and her perfect cheekbones. But behind the scenes, Hedy was deeply frustrated. Louis B. Mayer, like Mandl, saw her only for her looks. He cast her in roles that required little more than her stunning presence: the demure love interest, the mysterious siren. She was often dubbed the living statue, a beautiful object that Hollywood could parade, but never truly understand. Her intelligence, her restless curiosity, her innovative spirit, these were actively suppressed. "Any girl can be glamorous," she famously quipped. "All you have to do is stand there and look stupid." She was tired of looking stupid. While her co-stars spent their downtime socializing or reading scripts, Hedy was tucked away in her trailer, tinkering. She had a workbench, a set of tools, and a relentless drive to solve problems. She was, at heart, an inventor. "Inventing is easy," she once said. "The hardest part is getting people to believe you." The subjects of her fascination were vast: a new kind of tissue box, improved traffic lights, even a tablet that would dissolve in water to make a carbonated drink. Aviation tycoon Howard Hughes respected her mind, giving her access to his scientists. Hedy even critiqued his airplane designs, calling the wings too square. She sketched a streamlined version based on the anatomy of birds and fish. Hughes famously adopted her design, proving her engineering genius was real. But her most profound and ultimately world-changing invention sprang directly from the horrors she had witnessed in Mandl's castle. As Europe plunged into World War II, Hedy, a Jewish woman who had seen the Nazi war machine up close, felt a desperate need to contribute, to fight back with the only weapon she truly possessed: her mind. The problem that consumed her was torpedo guidance. Submarines were a terrifying threat, but their torpedoes were easily jammed or deflected if their radio signals could be intercepted. Hedy remembered Mandl's endless, boastful discussions about guided missiles, about the vulnerability of fixed-frequency radio control. She knew there had to be a way to create an unjammable signal. She envisioned a system where both the transmitter and the receiver would jump between radio frequencies simultaneously in a synchronized pattern. If the enemy didn't know the pattern, they couldn't jam the signal. It would be like two people talking on 1,000 different channels, changing channels every second, while everyone else just heard static. This was the birth of frequency hopping. Hedy found an unlikely collaborator in George Antheil, an avant-garde composer known for his experimental, often chaotic, musical pieces. Antheil had developed a system for synchronizing player pianos, using rolling paper to control the changes. Hedy realized that the same principle could be applied to synchronize frequency changes in radio signals. Imagine a player piano roll, But instead of controlling musical notes, it controlled radio frequencies. The two brilliant, eccentric minds, a movie star and a composer, began to work tirelessly in Hedy's living room, fueled by coffee and a shared passion for defeating Nazism. They were an improbable pair, but their combined genius was formidable. They even considered using a miniature player piano mechanism inside the torpedo itself. On August 11, 1942, Hedy Lamarr and George Antheil were granted U.S. Patent Number 2,292,387 for their secret communication system. The patent described a method for spreading spectrum radio communications, a concept that was decades ahead of its time. They offered their invention to the U.S. Navy. The Navy, however, was notoriously resistant to outside ideas, especially from a glamorous actress. The Navy didn't adopt the idea at the time, and Lamarr later said she felt dismissed because people couldn't imagine an actress producing serious engineering. They could not comprehend that the face on the cinema screen held a mind that understood advanced communications theory better than most of their own engineers. She was beautiful, therefore she must be brainless. The same prejudice that had trapped her in Mandl's castle now mocked her efforts to save lives. Frustrated by the Navy's dismissal, Hedy threw herself into war bond drives, using her celebrity to raise millions of dollars for the war effort. She traveled the country, charming audiences and signing autographs, always feeling that she could do more, that her mind was being wasted. She continued to act, starring in hits like Come Live With Me and Samson and Delilah, but her spirit yearned for intellectual engagement. Her private life, however, was a whirlwind of 6 marriages and numerous affairs, each one a desperate attempt to find a partner who could see beyond her dazzling exterior, who could appreciate the restless genius within. Her private life held a dark secret regarding her son, James Loder. Hedy claimed he was adopted, though evidence suggested he was her biological child. They became estranged when he was 12. In a final cold act, she cut him entirely from her will, severing ties with her own flesh and blood. She found fleeting moments of connection, but never the deep understanding she craved. Meanwhile, her secret communication system lay dormant, gathering dust in Navy archives. The technology was too complex, too far ahead of its time for the limited electronics of the 1940s. The player-piano mechanism, while ingenious, was too bulky for a torpedo, but the underlying principle, the idea of frequency hopping, was sound. It was a revolutionary concept that would wait decades for the advent of the microchip to truly come to life. Hedy Lamarr, the actress, continued to shine on screen, but Hedy Lamarr, the inventor, remained largely unrecognized, her incredible contribution to the war effort dismissed as a trivial hobby. Her professional life in Hollywood was also a battle against typecasting and the relentless march of time. Under studio pressure, Hedy turned to Dr. Max Jacobson, known as Dr. Feel Good. He injected stars with vitamin shots that were actually pure amphetamines. Hedy became dependent on these drugs to work long hours. The addiction fueled her energy but slowly destroyed her mental stability and behavior. As the studio system began to crumble in the 1950s, Hedy, like many of her contemporaries, struggled to adapt. Her beauty, once her greatest asset, became a gilded cage of its own, trapping her in roles that rarely challenged her intellect. She made her last film in 1958, retiring from acting to pursue her other passions. She delved deeper into her inventions, her curiosity undimmed. But the public, accustomed to her glamorous facade, remained unaware of the scientific breakthroughs she had already gifted to the world. She had escaped one prison, only to find herself in another, the prison of public perception, where her genius was invisible. Hedy Lamarr's Hollywood years were a study in contradiction, unmatched beauty clashing with profound intellect, public adoration masking private frustration. She was forced to play the role of a beautiful airhead while her mind was charting the course of future technology. Her invention, born from the crucible of war and dismissed by bureaucracy, lay dormant like a seed, waiting for the right conditions to bloom. She may have been a star, but her greatest contribution remained a secret, a testament to how easily genius can be overlooked when packaged in a dazzling exterior. The shadow of Mandl's castle still lingered, a constant reminder of the war she had fought, and the one she was secretly helping to win. The world was not ready for Hedy Lamarr, the scientist. The 1950s ushered in a new kind of conflict, the Cold War. The threat of nuclear annihilation loomed, and the race for technological supremacy was paramount. It was in this tense atmosphere that Hedy Lamarr's dormant patent began its slow, quiet journey from forgotten blueprint to foundational technology. Her original frequency hopping concept, deemed too complex for the bulky vacuum tube electronics of World War II, found new relevance with the advent of the transistor and later the microchip. The very problems that had stalled her invention, the need for precise synchronization and rapid frequency changes, were now solvable. The U.S. military, facing a new enemy and a new generation of sophisticated jamming technology, began to discreetly revisit her patent. By the late 1950s and 1960s, engineers began revisiting spread spectrum ideas as electronics improved, and Lamarr and Anthiel's patent was increasingly cited as an early blueprint. They recognized the brilliance of the synchronized frequency changes, understanding its potential to create secure, unjammable communications for military applications. This was not a reinvention. It was a rediscovery and a practical application of Lamarr's original foresight. Yet, her name remained conspicuously absent from the discussions. The most beautiful woman in the world had become a ghost in her own invention, her intellectual property quietly adopted by the very establishment that had once dismissed her as a mere movie star. The technology proved revolutionary. Over time, spread spectrum techniques became valuable for secure military communications, especially in environments where jamming and interception were major threats. It was later adopted for secure military communications during the Vietnam War. Its true power lay in its ability to resist jamming, giving crucial strategic advantages in hostile environments. But for decades, Hedy Lamarr received no recognition, no credit, and no financial compensation for her groundbreaking work. The patent expired in 1959, meaning that any subsequent use of the technology was freely available to the public. She had gifted the world a technology that would define the next century, and she received nothing in return. Meanwhile, Hedy's personal life was spiraling. Her beauty, once an undisputed asset, began to fade with age, and with it, her sense of identity. Hollywood had always valued her for her looks, and without them, she felt lost. She became increasingly reclusive, retreating from public life. The demands of fame, the relentless scrutiny, and the constant pressure to maintain an impossible standard of beauty had taken their toll. She underwent numerous plastic surgeries, desperately trying to cling to the image that had defined her. These procedures often left her disfigured, further eroding her self-esteem and pushing her deeper into isolation. By the 1960s, Hedy hit rock bottom. She was arrested twice for shoplifting trivial items like eye drops and makeup. It wasn't about money. Psychologists viewed it as a cry for help from a lonely, drug-dependent woman. The public humiliation drove her deeper into isolation. She was no longer the captivating star, but a fading icon haunted by her past and neglected by her present. Her inventive spirit, however, never truly died. Even in her later years, living modestly in Florida, she continued to tinker, to imagine, to solve. She installed a complicated intercom system in her apartment, designed new devices for the handicapped, and always had a notebook filled with ideas for improvements to everyday objects. This was the true Hedy Lamarr, not the glamorous star, but the restless, brilliant mind constantly seeking innovation. The tragedy was that the world refused to see this side of her. To them, she was forever the woman from Ecstasy, the dazzling face who had married 6 times. Her genius remained a whispered secret, known only to a handful of engineers who had dug through old patents. Even in seclusion, Hedy fought back. She successfully sued Coral Software for using her face and filmmaker Mel Brooks for mocking her name. These legal battles proved that despite her decline, she remained determined to own her identity until the very end. It wasn't until the 1980s and 1990s, with the explosion of cellular technology and the internet, that the full scope of Lamarr's invention became apparent. Decades later, spread spectrum techniques, including frequency hopping, became part of the toolkit behind modern wireless systems, like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and related approaches are used in GPS. The technique of frequency hopping, which she and Antheil had conceived to guide torpedoes, was now powering the wireless world. Every time you connect to Wi-Fi, every time your phone finds a signal, you are benefiting from Hedy Lamarr's brilliance. The military applications had evolved into civilian ones, connecting billions of people across the globe. Finally, in 1997, at the age of 83, Hedy Lamarr received belated recognition. The Electronic Frontier Foundation honored her with a special award for her pioneering work in spread spectrum technology. She was frail, reclusive, and barely able to speak publicly, but the award brought a flicker of light to her isolated existence. "I guess I am finally appreciated," she reportedly told her son. It was a bittersweet moment, decades too late for her to truly enjoy the fruits of her labor or to receive the financial windfall that would have been hers had the patent been properly valued. Antheil had died in 1959, never knowing the profound impact their invention would have. Hedy Lamarr passed away in 2000 at the age of 86, still largely unknown for her greatest achievement. Her obituaries focused on her beauty, her films, and her tumultuous personal life. Only a handful mentioned her groundbreaking patent. It was a final, ironic twist in a life defined by the world's inability to see beyond her dazzling exterior. She had escaped a physical prison, endured a professional one, and finally found posthumous liberation for her mind, proving that true genius, like water, will always find a way to break free. Only late in life, and even more after her death, did public attention begin to catch up with what her patent actually meant. Journalists, historians, and tech enthusiasts unearthed her story, piecing together the incredible journey from Mandl's castle to Hollywood's sound stages and ultimately to the foundation of wireless communication. Her patent, once a dusty document in the U.S. Navy archives, became a beacon, illuminating the profound impact of a woman whom the world had consistently underestimated. The trophy wife had, in fact, been a visionary. This shift wasn't just about giving credit where credit was due. It was about rewriting a chapter of technological history. For decades, the story of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth was told without mentioning its true genesis. Lamarr and Anthiel's patent demonstrated that the concept of spread spectrum, often attributed solely to later engineers, had a clear earlier origin rooted in a unique collaboration between art and science. This revelation challenged the patriarchal assumptions embedded in the history of innovation, forcing a reevaluation of who gets to be an inventor and whose contributions are deemed worthy of remembrance. The very image of the inventor, typically a man in a lab coat, began to expand to include a woman in a ball gown. The basic principle she helped popularize became a building block for modern wireless communication. Without spread spectrum technology, the seamless wireless connections we take for granted today, Wi-Fi in our homes, Bluetooth in our headphones, GPS in our cars, would not exist in their current form. Her initial idea, conceived to guide torpedoes and save lives during World War II, evolved into a ubiquitous force for connectivity and information sharing. It allowed for greater data security, robust communication in crowded airwaves, and the foundation for countless digital innovations. Hedy Lamarr didn't just invent a piece of technology, she laid the groundwork for a connected world, a world where distance and physical barriers are constantly being overcome by invisible waves of information. The historical controversy surrounding her lack of recognition highlights a broader issue: the persistent dismissal of women's contributions to science and technology. Hedy Lamarr was not the only female inventor whose work was overlooked or actively suppressed. Her story became a powerful case study, inspiring new generations to look beyond traditional narratives and question the biases inherent in historical record-keeping. It underscored the importance of valuing diverse perspectives in innovation, recognizing that groundbreaking ideas can come from the most unexpected places, even from a Hollywood movie star in her trailer. Her life became a symbol for countless women struggling to have their intellectual work taken seriously in fields dominated by men. Beyond her scientific contributions, Hedy Lamarr's personal story continues to resonate. Her journey from aristocratic prisoner to Hollywood icon to reclusive inventor is a testament to resilience and the enduring power of the human spirit. She navigated a world that constantly tried to define her by her looks, but she stubbornly insisted on living by her own intellect. Her battles with addiction, her many marriages, and her struggles with mental health in later life paint a complex human picture of a woman who was brilliant but also deeply flawed, demonstrating the profound personal cost of living a life under constant scrutiny and misinterpretation. She was a woman who demanded freedom, intellectual, personal, and artistic, in an era that sought to confine her. In 2014, Lamarr and Anthiel were posthumously inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame, cementing their place in the history of wireless communication. Her original patent now hangs in prestigious museums and institutions, a symbol of innovation and perseverance. Documentaries and books have finally given her story the depth and nuance it deserves, celebrating not just her beauty, but her remarkable mind. Her image, once solely associated with glamour, is now also associated with invention, a powerful duality that continues to challenge perceptions and inspire. She stands as a reminder that true genius transcends superficial labels and that the quiet work of a brilliant mind can echo through centuries, shaping the future in ways unimaginable at the time of its conception. The culmination of Hedy Lamarr's narrative transcends mere biographical details. It positions her as the unseen architect of connection, a prophet of the digital age who foresaw the power of wireless communication decades before it became a global reality. Her journey from the glittering but suffocating ballrooms of Mandl's castle to the quiet obscurity of her later years mirrors the slow, almost accidental unfolding of her most profound invention. This final act isn't just about recognition. It's about understanding the profound moral and technological ripples she sent across history, connecting humanity in ways she could barely have imagined. Mandl's fortress, where Hedy was confined, was a microcosm of a pre-war Europe hurtling towards catastrophic conflict. The conversations she overheard about torpedo guidance and frequency control weren't just technical specifications. They were blueprints for murder. Her invention, therefore, wasn't merely a technological curiosity. It was an act of profound moral courage. As a Jewish woman entertaining Nazis, she experienced firsthand the chilling indifference of the powerful to human suffering. Her desire to create an unjammable system was a direct response to this, a quiet intellectual rebellion against the machinery of destruction her husband so eagerly supplied. She was designing a way for the good guys to communicate securely in a world where evil was finding its voice through propaganda and unhindered military might. The ultimate irony of her life is that the very beauty that was her gilded cage became her unwitting alibi. Because she was so stunning, so overtly glamorous, no one, especially not the male-dominated military establishment, could conceive that she possessed the intellectual rigor to invent something so complex. Her appearance was a form of camouflage, allowing her to move through the world and observe, listen, and think, while everyone else dismissed her as a mere ornament. It was the perfect disguise for a secret inventor, a brilliant woman hiding in plain sight. This paradox is central to understanding why her contribution was overlooked for so long and why its eventual discovery was so profoundly impactful. Beyond the technology itself, Hedy Lamarr's story illuminates the concept of lateral thinking, the ability to solve problems through an indirect and creative approach. Who else but an actress and an avant-garde composer would look at player piano rolls and see a solution for secure military communications? Their collaboration was a testament to the power of interdisciplinary thought, breaking down the rigid silos of science and art. It demonstrated that innovation often arises at the fringes, from minds unburdened by conventional wisdom. This unconventional approach, born from Hedy's desperate need to contribute to the war effort, provided a breakthrough that traditional military engineering had missed. Her struggle for recognition, which lasted virtually her entire life, also serves as a potent reminder of the fragility of intellectual property and the historical challenges faced by independent inventors. In an era dominated by large corporations and government research labs, an individual's groundbreaking idea could easily be absorbed and its origin forgotten. The expiration of her patent meant she never reaped the financial rewards of her genius, a common fate for many pioneering inventors. However, her ultimate posthumous vindication through the widespread adoption of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth offers a profound lesson. True innovation, if it is fundamentally sound, will eventually find its way into the world, regardless of initial skepticism or forgotten patents. The legacy of Hedy Lamarr, therefore, is multifaceted. She is celebrated not only as an actress and an inventor, but as a symbol of defiance against patriarchal norms. Her life challenges us to look beyond superficial appearances, to seek out and value the hidden depths of individuals, particularly women, whose contributions have been historically marginalized. Every time we connect wirelessly, We are performing a small act of remembrance, tapping into the enduring brilliance of a woman who escaped a castle of tyranny, fought Hollywood's shallow gaze, and ultimately helped lay the invisible groundwork for our interconnected world. She was the trophy wife of war who, with nothing but her mind and a desperate hope for freedom, became the unseen architect of global communication.